In the late 70s to the early 80s, role-playing games were dominated by TSR and Games Workshop. For many, entry into the tabletop RPG community meant playing a fantasy game such as Dungeons & Dragons or RuneQuest, or some breed of science fantasy such as Gamma World or Traveler. Most players, when they thought of a sci-fi game, assumed they'd be getting into adventures akin to early Doctor Who, Wizards, or Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Now, I'm not about to poo-poo someone else's fun. After all, my gaming group is tooling up to play the Star Wars RPG, so it'd be a tad hypocritical. But, even in the sci-fi offerings of that era, there was a distinct focus on the fantasy aspect of exploring the known universe. The first real commercial overtures of anything resembling hard science wouldn't show their head until Games Workshop released Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader in late 1987. Well, GW also released a board game based on the 2000 AD comic series Rogue Trooper, which was also released in 1987, but through either inept marketing or general lack of popularity, it's been lost to the sands of time, with YouTube channels similar to my own doing the archaeology necessary to find playable copies. Tangents aside, role-playing games wouldn't see a hard science edge until 1988 and 1989, the years Cyberpunk and Shadowrun were initially released, respectively. Little did us regular folks know, there was a guy who, inspired by writers like Heinlein, Clarke, and Asimov, was slowly but surely pecking away at his own RPG system. Starting all the way back in 1983, allow me to introduce you all to Mr. Jason Oberman, the writer and publisher of the military sci-fi game we're going to be reviewing today, 6083. First and foremost, for transparency's sake, I'll briefly discuss my current working relationship with Mr. Oberman. He approached me after seeing my Giant Lands review and asked if I'd look over his game. 6083 is freely available on both his personal website, missioncontrol6083.com, as well as his drive-thru RPG page. Links will be available below. So of course I said yes. Also, this review is purely of my own volition. I'm not being paid, nor have I requested payment. Jason and I chatted at length about his game, some of the design elements that went into it, as well as what inspired him to write it, citing both his love of hard science stories and his service in the US Army. With that out of the way, let's get the show on the road. As always, my tabletop game reviews are broken down into 5 categories: readability, learning curve, crunch factor, system depth, and lore depth. These categories each get a 1 through 5 rating, from simple to esoteric. As I've said in the past, these ratings aren't inherently good or bad. They're my way of describing the game so that you can decide if it's something you want to run for your table, or if something you want to play. To fully play 6083, all 3 downloadable files are required. Player's Handbook, obviously, GMs Manual, and the Alliance Market. Also available on the main website is a handful of starter adventures to help ease new groups and GMs to the system and its gameplay loop. Physical copies have been discussed, and as of this video, the current estimate is that they'll be available by the end of 2022. To better support the theater of the mind aspect of the tabletop RPG, all 3 books have fantastic artwork, drawn by the man himself, which helps clarify and elaborate item and character descriptions. Many times when reading military sci-fi or military-leaning fiction, there's a level of assumed knowledge that'll throw off new readers. Things like acronyms, 24-hour clock cycles, distance and range measurements, or knowing the difference between a magazine, a clip, an FNG, and a POG. 6083 surpasses this hurdle with flying colors. While it does assume a degree of prior knowledge, if you're a fan of Star Trek, you'll be just fine. Any universe-specific acronyms and phrases are introduced in a bubble and explained before being chucked into regular sentences. While the writing does hope you already have a history with RPGs, 6083 walks you through as if this is your first game ever. That's always nice to see. Readability rating: thorough. Understandably, 6083 has a distinct learning curve. The game was designed from the ground up without referencing other RPGs, instead opting to go with what was absolutely required and building around those core stats from there. all characters have a pretty healthy sized roster of stats to accurately gauge what they're capable of. In order, these stats are mental resistance, vision, hearing, senses, everything not covered by vision and hearing. Sly, balance and coordination, physical fitness, physical endurance and resistance, radiation resistance, technical knowledge, languages learned, reaction, and movement. Also included are rank, which covers their level, hit rank, their attack and defense rating, shock points, their health, advancement points, used to improve their level, their rank, training points, used to improve your skills and combat abilities, credits, pocket change, pay, because it wouldn't be a military sci-fi game if your character didn't have a pay grade based on their rank in mission control, officer rank, how much weight that little patch on their shoulder can throw around, if any, classifications, basically your racial and birthplace modifiers, of which there are 18 playable races, professions, augments, special skills, and immunity levels. On top of that, there's a chart for converting the majority of your core stats from the 3d6 character creation roll into percentiles. Again, I'd like to remind you, there's a handful of tutorial missions available on the website to ease new players and groups into the game, because it's a lot. Learning curve rating involved. 6083 relies on a relatively standard array of commonly available dice. Skill checks are made with the roll under 2d10 percentile system. However, things spike in complexity when combat rolls around. Attacks are made with 3d6. However, it's suggested each of those three are unique because they don't just signify hit or miss, they also signify general hit location, specific hit location, and damage severity. This, in tandem with locational and layerable armor, as well as hit roll modifiers, adds an impressive layer of variables. That might be a bit of a turnoff to plug-and-play gamers. Veterans of Battletech and Cyberpunk will feel right at home, as combat in action feels wonderfully similar to Battletech's Gator modifier tree and the frighteningly fast brutality of Cyberpunk's Friday Night Firefight. In my opinion, it's vitally important that during combat, the GM, between rolls, keeps the theater of the mind active and present. Nothing kills encounters and enjoyment faster than players monotonously barking out numbers and modifiers, and only to have the game master reply with, "Hit, what's the damage?" or "Miss." Whereas, hearing how the burst of laser fire you just let loose took an enemy droid's leg clean off, or hearing how the enemy's breastplate is practically glowing from sustained fire, that's engaging. Also a little terrifying if their armor is glowing, you've been shooting them in the chest so often, but that's a tangent for another day. Crunch factor rating involved. While the player's handbook goes into the details important to making a character and understanding what they can do, as well as character advancement and unique things that can happen both during skill checks and combat, the GM's Manual and Alliance Market fills in the blanks on everything your characters will need and need to know during an assignment. The GM's Manual covers most anything and everything players will encounter on a mission, utilizing the better part of 150 pages to make sure that if a situation arises, there's a jar for it. And not just classic skill checks in combat either. Ground vehicles, aerospace assets, combat mechs, all have rules and specific stats, as well as environmental factors you may have to contend with. This is a sci-fi RPG, so inhospitable planets and accidentally getting vented into the vacuum of space is a real and terrifying possibility. However, thorough readers will notice, barely anywhere in the player's handbook or GM's manual is there anything close to stats or even readouts on equipment, which, frankly speaking, scared the hell out of me on my initial reading. And then I discovered the joy that is the Alliance Market, clocking in at an extra thick 218 pages All purchasable equipment, weapons, vehicles, and augmentations are in here. 41 pages alone are devoted to firearms.
Guns. Lots of guns.
Icing on the cake for me is the in-universe advertisements for all the different manufacturers, or even for our hero group, Capsoc, Mission Control. There's something very honest about these in-game groups and megacorporations taking full-page ads, suggesting heroic service to a higher cause, or showing off a gorgeous babe wielding the latest offering from Mercado Fine Armaments. Overall, the level of effort and detail that's been put into what players and NPCs can bring to bear during a mission is beautiful. And for comparison's sake, nowadays you need to buy 2 or 3 supplemental books to match the quality and quantity of goodies that's just here in the game on release for free. On a final note for this section, I did want to briefly discuss gameplay and the gameplay loop. Normally, this isn't really a measurable thing for a tabletop RPG, as traditional and modern RPGs alike are as open or narrow as the GM allows. 6083 is unique in that gameplay revolves around missions. Speaking plainly, this is essentially the new planet every week trope from Star Trek. Something's afoot, and it's up to you and your team to investigate. The GM's Guide not only discusses the mission structure, it also puts emphasis on having the players discuss the mission with the commanding officer NPC who's assigning it to them, probing for available information and discussing potential outcomes and how to accomplish their assigned goals. I gotta say, I've only ever seen that sort of direct statement of success and failure states in war games and video games. It clarifies things in a way I'm quite fond of. Understandably, of course, the first question then asked is, well, where's the roleplay then, if this is supposedly a role-playing game? Well, it's simple. It's where you find it. And not just in obvious spots like downtime travel during or between missions. But the mission itself has a wealth of opportunities to really live the part that you're playing. Not every situation is going to be talking down a hostage taker or being a big damn hero. Sometimes it's interacting with locals, trying to get information or garner goodwill so your job is easier to perform. Maybe it's something quiet and personal, like handing a child a candy bar because your character remembers what it was like to go hungry. What I'm getting at is, don't let the phrase mission structure scare you off or make you think it's a war game with light RPG elements. There's always a story. You just gotta try for it. Just gotta put in the effort. System depth rating, esoteric. With any series claiming to cover sci-fi or science fantasy, having technology and lore that makes sense or feels right can make or break the setting. It's here I feel 6083 finds that delicate balance between showing the audience and telling them something exists or functions. While every faction and playable race has a hearty paragraph or two devoted to filling in the blanks, there's also time dedicated to discussing specific regions of space, equipment and item concepts, as well as the game's timeline. Starting in 3240, humanity, surprising absolutely no one, almost completely destroys itself and Earth in a time period referred to historically as the Burn. And doesn't really crawl out of that hole until the 4100s, eventually creating warp-capable ships in 5703 with the invention of the Deco Drive. And all of that occurs before first contact with alien races, because for the past 7,000 plus years, our solar system was quarantined, having been the key site of a massive interstellar war long before recorded human history. There's a lot going on. Obviously, I'm just scratching the surface here. The game is set in the titular year of 6083, but that's entirely on purpose. There is so much unique and varied lore. Frankly, I don't want to spoil any of it. Historical lore has specifics that are set in stone, absolutely fantastic, but current and regional lore is notably flexible, or couple sentence descriptions, or maybe just a light touch of this group lives here, they have a couple of things going on, fair bit of travel. That gives GMs and players a huge amount of room to tell their own stories inside the game. The galaxy is frankly a mess, having barely survived a war that lasted 27 years. So having that room to essentially treat the universe as points of light in the darkness, having our team go out there and bring order to chaos, it's phenomenal. Lore depth rating, involved. In closing, 6083 is a complex and worthy offering. Fans of Star Trek, Mass Effect, and even early Tom Clancy novels will feel right at home, with it carefully balancing realism, science fantasy, and game mechanics to bring a genuinely fun and well-assembled experience to the table. The lore is intelligent without being bloated. The gameplay has a strong focus on math and modifiers because those situations can arise in real life. Frankly, I'm excited to see how my gaming group handles it. And I'm just excited to see what next from Mr. Jason Oberman. Well, thank you for watching, folks. As always, if you enjoy my videos and you'd like to see more, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. If you have any questions or concern, comment section is always open. I'm currently releasing my Let's Play of Fable, The Lost Chapters, on my gaming channel, if you want to check that out. I will have a full review here when I finish the Let's Play. In addition, I'm filming videos for a standalone mod that came out relatively recently. We'll see how that pans out. Unfortunately, we're all out of time for today, folks. So until we meet again, stay classy, Internet.